Well, let's move on to our guest. And our guest today is Dr. Chris Flowers. And Debi, an interesting little gathering took place in Cornwall. I'll hand over to you here.
Thank you. Yes, and good afternoon. Yes, that picture was taken last week. And, you know, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in miracles. And I met up with our very own Cheryl Granger. She was in the photograph. Dr. David Cartland, who many of our audience will know. And also Dr. Liz Evans from UK Medical Freedom Alliance. And today's guest, Dr. Chris Flowers. Dr. Chris Flowers is overseeing and coordinating 3,500 volunteer researchers analysing the released Pfizer and Moderna documents. Now, I'm hoping that many of our audience will have seen our two previous interviews with Dr. Naomi Wolf, What Pfizer Knew, and also Amy Kelly, the angel with Clout, where they talk about the release of the documents. Now, Dr. Chris Flowers is a retired associate professor of radiology at the University of South Florida. He was previously an associate professor of radiology and biomedical imaging at the University of California, San Francisco. He's also a retired academic, cancer radiologist, author, and scientific paper reviewer for multiple radiology journals. And I have to say that means he's an expert in clinical trials. Not only that, but during our encounter, we found out that we both trained at the same time in the same hospital at the Royal Free. So we are both Royal Freers. And he brought with him his amazing book that they've compiled at the DailyClout, the Pfizer Documents Analysis Reports. And you can find Dr. Flowers on Substack at A Bunch of Flowers. And I'm just going to do no more than to say, welcome, Dr. Flowers. Number one, back to the UK, and number two, to the UK column. We're so glad to have you here. And you oversee 3,500 researchers. Please introduce yourself and tell us, how did you get into doing this? And what kind of army of experts are you overseeing?
Wow. Thank you very much, Debi, for that intro. Really, I start off, I was a consultant radiologist in Swansea and leading the West Wales breast cancer screening program as part of Breast Test Wales, and involved in clinical trials both for screening and also for cancer treatment, as I eventually became the sort of one of the leads in the cancer network for West Wales. So I've got a lot of history both in clinical trials and in sort of balancing out the risk versus harms, which is one of the most important things when you're talking about a public health intervention. And that's what the vaccine was. Basically, it's a public health intervention in well people, in which you want the minimum amount of harms to be done to get the maximum effect. And basically, as things have progressed, it became very obvious that there were far more adverse events going on as a result of the vaccine than was being acknowledged. And the endless brought to you by Pfizer in the US, it's horrendous. Every single news segment ends up or begins with brought to you by Pfizer. Everything is sponsored by Pfizer. There's adverts everywhere about the vaccine, but no mention whatsoever of the potential side effects. And when we started having people suddenly dropping dead for no reason, usually healthy people, which it used to make national headlines in the days when, like, for example, there was Terry Yorath's son, who was Gareth Yorath. He was Terry Yorath was the manager of Swansea City, and his son, who was young and healthy, suddenly dropped dead, and it was because he had something called a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So that was something that was a hidden, scary sort of thing that happened to present as a sudden adult death. And this sort of thing gets reported in national news, and then you wouldn't hear anything for ages. Now we've come to the new normal where people are just dropping dead or having heart attacks and cardiac arrest, dropping down on a sports field and ending up with heart damage, and often not being able to return to the sport that they love. So it was very obvious to me that something was going on. And it was about almost 2 years ago when there were rumors that they were trying to get hold of the data from the clinical trials of Pfizer. I thought, well, this is a wonderful opportunity to get involved in finding out exactly what went on. And we're now well over 18 months into this process. The FDA tried to hide these documents. They said, it would take 55 years to produce all these documents. Then they upgraded it to 75 years. It's going to take us 75 years. We can't possibly do this. This is the Freedom of Information Act is what normally happens. Even in the UK, you try and get something done, and they always say, we're too busy, or we haven't got enough staff, or there's too much information there to release, so we can't possibly give it out. But we had success by judge shopping, if you like, finding a judge in North Texas, and the attorney, Aaron Siri, and his law firm managed to get a freedom of access through the judge to release the documents by Pfizer. And as a result, we have had this torrent of documents which are being released, some of them in a hidden manner, so that we've now got evidence of actually what happened. We can see the documents. And seeing the documents makes your head blow up even more, which is why we have 3,500 volunteers who took part in this and feeding me with all the information they can find out of the documents and trying to sieve this down into little compartments and getting our medical teams to look at it, write them up, both as reports for that everyday folk can read and understand, but also we're actually writing manuscripts for publication, and we hopefully will have those submitted very, very soon. Our responses, for example, to the original Pfizer clinical trial document that came out in the New England Journal of Medicine in December 2021, which is the reason basically that the FDA gave the go-ahead for the emergency use authorization to give this BioNTech 162b2 to the world. Now, in America, that's all we've got. We've got the experimental BNT 162b2. And the only person who are given anything different, which is what you're not getting the same drug that we're getting. The military got something called Comirnaty, and that's the one that was a different composition, and it was the one that was released commercially. And we thought, well, maybe we could get them on malfeasance, failure to protect the population. But it turns out, because this was all done through another transaction authority, that this was done through the Department of Defense, and Pfizer are completely immunized, if you like. It's a bad term to use. They're immunized against any lawsuits or any finding of wrongdoing. And that came out in the Brooke Jackson trial that showed that Pfizer's response is, we didn't have to do a proper clinical trial. We could do a fraudulent clinical trial. It didn't matter because the government were paying for it anyway, which is a very, very weird sort of argument to make. But it does open your eyes to the fact that this isn't just a simple big pharma thing. This is something much bigger, and it's with the involvement of the US military and the connivance, the malfeasance, really, of the FDA and the CDC advisory committees. They've not done their job, and I suspect, from what I've heard, that the MHRA is very, very similar in that it's almost like money laundering, but it's big pharma laundering, giving you things you shouldn't
Exactly.
have.
Yeah, I have to say, I should add at this point too that two things actually that we're going. Dr. Flowers, we have got so much to talk about, including turbo cancer, myocarditis, and I know that you are going to be staying with us for exclusively for Extra, and I know that I'm going to be touching on these. So thank you so much. But I think it's also important to note that the data that you're looking at, the thousands, the millions of documents that you're looking at, are the same documents that the MHRA are looking at. And just before you go, Dr. Flowers, on the main news, could you show everybody the copy of the book of the Pfizer documents so that everyone can see it just before we say goodbye and thank you? There we go. The Pfizer documents analysis report. Thank you so much, Dr. Flowers. I know that we've got a lot more to talk about, and we'll be joining Dr. Flowers again in Extra.
Okay, Dr. Flowers, thank you very much for that. Debi, thank you. And of course, we look forward to discussing things in more detail in Extra time. Well, the critical thing for the UK column, if you like what we're doing, please join us. That enables you to join in the community, talk to other people and share information, which is always good. It's always great if you will visit our shop and perhaps make a purchase, as that helps support us in a financial way, which is very, very important. And we like to think the information from the news is getting out as far and wide as possible. So we share it with you. Please, will you share it with other people, because the aim of the game is to get it going as far as it possibly can. Now, I just wanted to say that we've had some really good feedback on David Scott's interview with Katie Hopkins. Laughter is infectious. This is up on the UK column website. We've had many comments coming back in. This one from Graham said, just wanted to say how much I enjoyed and appreciated David Scott's interview with Katie Hopkins. What a wonderful, entertaining, principled and inspiring lady she is. She's been such an incredible well of positivity and defiance during the last few years. And we understand this is people reacting to positive news because we're well aware that the reality of the news on a daily basis in UK can be pretty dark. But there's also some laughter. A few days ago, I interviewed Clive de Carle on health matters. Very interesting interview. Great to speak to him after quite a long time of not speaking to him. And he's also doing this event in Glastonbury. This is Saturday, the 19th of August. And have a look at his website, clivedecarle.com, for tickets. But this is connected with lifting the mood. Now, Debi's got a blog here, Debi Evans' blog, Their Terrifying Plan. She's commenting on the book by Dr. Vernon Coleman, amongst other things. Debi, have you got anything you want to add very quickly?
Very quickly, LK99 VX548. What is VX548? And also in my blog, Medically Assisted Deaths. And are you willing to travel to another country for your treatment? Because you will be expected to.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much for that. Now, a big thank you to Jane, who sent us a card for our new home, our new studio home, and a donation. It was very kind of you. Thank you very much. And I'm using the opportunity to thank other people making us donations. We can only do what we do with your support, and it's really wonderful that there are so many generous people out there. So thank you for that. We're getting more and more emails coming into the UK column with information and comments and analysis in some cases. This little one came through from John, and he said, please, will you pay attention to what's happening with the asylum seekers in Wales, and SOSPAN .Wales. Now, I'm going to say we did report on this a little while back, but we will try and focus in again. We know it's important. If there's anybody involved in that area who can speak to us direct, that would be very good. And